Hi everybody. Sean Bacon here. For anybody who doesn't know me, I'm a full-time professor in the graphic design program here at San Diego City College, and I am the program lead of graphic design. I'm so excited that all of you are here. I'm grateful for your attendance, and I'm also extremely grateful to you, Chris Do, for giving us your time and coming back to City and inspiring our students. So thank you so much for being here. I thought I'd kick it off though, because I know there might be some people here who aren't familiar with our institution. So this event is being run by San Diego City College, which Chris is an alum of. Way back, went through our program, studied with Candice Lopez. So it's a really special experience for us to have this all come full circle and to have Chris back here with us. We're an award-winning program that's embedded in San Diego City College, which is a community college in downtown San Diego that's a part of the San Diego Community College District. And we really work to help students prepare for the real world in graphic design, but also interaction design. We're also an open access institution, which I like to mention, just something we're really proud of. That helps us really serve a wide range of students who are interested in design. Open access means that there's no requirements for acceptance. There's no application process, no worry if you could join or not. Anybody is really welcome in our program. And why that's so important to us is it really helps us achieve our mission of helping launch the careers of a really diverse population and people who can't always access a design education in other ways. Like I said, we have a very strong regional reputation and building a national and even international reputation for the work that our students do, for the awards and scholarships that we win. So we're a place where we really believe in the power of design, and we really believe in equity and allowing access to all kinds of people to study with us. We also have a wide range of degree paths and classes, and ways that you can get involved with our program if you're interested. I'll put some links in chat for you. You might follow us on Instagram and see a little bit of what we do behind the scenes in our program, but also link our program website where you can learn more of what we're all about. But we're so happy to have you here, and we're so happy to have you, Chris, and I'll turn it over to you, Candice, to do a little intro.
Thank you, Sean. Hey, everybody. I'm looking at some of the names in chat. How are you doing? It's so great to reconnect with some of our alumni, and I'm very happy you could join us today. My name is Candice, and about 3 decades ago, this really fascinating student showed up in my class at City. And today I'm just feeling really grateful and excited to welcome back home a really special alumni to San Diego City College Graphic Design. So from Saigon to Santa Monica, Chris Do is a first-generation immigrant, and we get a lot of that at San Diego City College. He grew up watching Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends, narrated by Stan Lee. At a really young age, he thought he wanted to be a comic book artist. And so he kind of pursued creative things. And he's a middle child, he's an introvert and a father of 2. So most of us know Chris as an Emmy Award-winning designer, director, CEO, and the chief strategist at Blind. But he's also the founder, as most of you know, of the Futur, which is like this trailblazing education platform. I remember when he reached out and he was beginning to start it. It's on a mission to reach 1 billion people with business and design education. And I think if you've watched any of the video, Chris teaches us how to take risks. So it's not a surprise that he's ridden a camel in Cairo. He swam with whale sharks in the Philippines. And with the millions of subscribers and followers he has, it's not surprising that he was recognized on the way back home by a TS agent scanning his bags. Now, beyond the Futur, he's an instructor at Art College of Design. And Chris took a 22-year detour before he made the commitment to teach full time. And lucky for us, because he's really gifted, he's a revolutionary teacher, in my opinion. He's really kind, he's wise, and also knows how to make learning fun, which is always important. And times have been really challenging here at San Diego City College for many people. And I'm sure probably for many of you that are attending today. And we kind of put our thinking caps on, and we were thinking about like even the struggles that are going on around our planet right now that are pretty upsetting. And it seemed like the right time to ask Chris to come shine some light. After all, in his work, he helps us get unstuck. He helps us find our creative path and manage stress. And more importantly than all of that, he has taught us to trust our inner compass and really believe in our dreams and do what we love. So, hey, Chris Do is in the house. Welcome home, Chris. We're so happy you're here.
Thank you so much for having me back, Candace. I would not be where I'm at if it weren't for you and the program at San Diego City College. So I'm so grateful to be here. I just want to say something to everyone who's watching this or live with us or potentially watching this down the line. If you ever have a question, if you ever feel stuck, just reach out to me. I try to make myself as available as I can within limitations. So just shoot me a DM. And so something I like to tell everybody is I have some stories, I have things I'd like to share with you, but only if they're relevant and make sense to what you're going through right now. So the best way I know how to do that is for you to start thinking about some questions that you want to ask. And I'm going to encourage you to ask openly, to be asked unabashedly, to just be brave enough to ask the question. If there's something that you want to know that I have the answer to, I will do my best to tell it to you. And if you don't like the answer, ask it again, and I'll try to do better the second time around. As I can't believe it when Candace mentioned 3 decades ago. I'm like, it can't be 3 decades. Candace, you look too young to be 3 decades. But then I was doing the math. It has been 3 decades. This is nuts. This is nuts. So when I was, I think it was 18, I moved down to La Jolla to live with my older brother, Arthur. And I was looking into community colleges and looking for an art program because I had made up my mind, like, I want to be a graphic designer. And I looked at the 2 colleges close by, and San Diego City College had the program, had a graphic design course. I'm like, this was meant to be. I'm here. And I still remember to this day, first day in class, and Candace also brought in an Art Center alumnus. His name is Luis Fitch, and his portfolio was amazing. So I was all in at that point in time. And so I want to tell you all a couple different things, just to kind of set the context and the intention for our conversation today, which is this. It's like, it would be great if life fell conveniently along a very linear path, like a plan that was just point A to point B. It's just a straight line. But as many of you know, life doesn't really work out that way. And if you were to look at my life and my path, it's more like R to Q to X to W to B to C. It's like all over the place. And for you to not to panic, this is all part of a larger design. Whether you believe in a higher power or not, or some other cosmic spiritual thing, it's a part of a bigger plan. And I'll tell you a little bit about some of the things that you may or may not know about me. I was originally supposed to go to UC school. And the problem was I was not very focused as a high school student. I was not engaged with the content, and I was feeling conflicted in my desires to express myself creatively, but also not wanting to dishonor my parents for the sacrifices they've made so that I can pursue something noble and like to be an upstanding citizen of the world. They wanted me to be what you would normally expect as a first-generation immigrant, which is to be a doctor, a lawyer, accountant, something respectable. But my grades were just not good enough, in all truth. So when I submitted my application to different schools, I submitted to UCLA. I was rejected. I submitted my application to UC San Diego, where my brother went, rejected. So the only UC I got into was, you see what happens when you don't focus on school? That's the school I got into. So I was scrambling. I went to Asian apparent purgatory, or AKA hell. I went to junior college, which is where good kids go to disappear into the world, and they get a trade or something like that. And luckily, though, my parents didn't totally write me off, but they were on the edge of it, thinking, well, we got one into good school. Maybe there's an opportunity for the third child because I'm a middle child. But it's at San Diego that I start to find my direction. I start working my portfolio, hit some hard times for sure, and I get into Art Center. And all these things, all these setbacks were actually, I think, part of a larger design, one that I could not see in the moment, but only when you look back, you see how they all connect. I'm going to pause there just because that's where I wanted to start the story.
I love that. And yeah, we will be doing a big Q&A here, guys. So use the Q&A button if you want to ask a question, and I'll shout them out to Chris. But I'll take the first one, Chris. And
okay,
what I want to know, like, first of all, you're one of my design heroes. I've been following you since you came to speak at my portfolio review way back in the day. And when I first started in the design business, a wise person told me that most design endeavors don't fail because of bad design. They fail because of bad business and because they don't keep up, with basic things like the books and client development. And, one thing that's always struck me about you is that you're really stellar at both. You got the design, you've got the business. So my question is, what's your magic? How do you keep those two things balanced? What's more important? And how do we all do better on the business end of things?
Excellent question, Bradford. I do want to explain where that balance comes from. I was lucky enough to be born into a world where both parents were so diametrically different from each other. All of my mom's side of the family, they're very artistic and creative. They're poets, songwriters, singers, dancers, and they're all broke. Relatively speaking, I should say that with some respect there. And then on my dad's side of the family, they're all engineers. They're all like technical people, and they do pretty well in life, and they're doing well. But I just don't know if they do anything but other than just live for the weekends. There is not a lot of soul-stirring work that they get to do, and I think they are responsible and do what is necessary, and so they have the financial security. Whereas my mom's side of the family, everyone is enjoying and loving life, but not always in the best financial positions. And so I am kind of like split down the middle there. And that's why I had such a hard time figuring out what it is I want to do. I took a high school aptitude test, and it told me I was supposed to be like an investment banker, a stockbroker, or literally an accountant. I was like, nope, because I don't want to talk to people. I like things that make sense, binary. I like working with computers and with my hands, and that's about it. And so that's what I thought I was going to do. And had things worked out the way they were supposed to work out, according to my parents, I would not be here today. And so for me, it's always been a negotiation between these two sides. The artist, the creative in me, wants to just play all day and not worry about numbers or running the business or having an employee and doing things like management, marketing, sales, and negotiations. And then the business person in me likes structure, wants to be a systems designer, but after doing that for a while, I get hungry for this other thing, the creative stuff. And so for me, it's about making peace with those two sides, allowing them to cooperate, and understanding that there's a myth that we're told, and this will be the first myth that I try to address today, which is this. Some of you have been told, and I hope I'm not offending anybody, that just focus on your craft, just be better at whatever it is that you're doing, and you're going to do well in life. And for a very rare and small percentage of people, that's all you need, because the world will beat down a path to your door, and that's it, and you're going to be set. The rest of us, I include myself in that group, is the talent gets you considered, might get you an opportunity, but it's your business acumen, your skills with working with clients, building an excellent customer service experience, learning how to negotiate a better or fairer price for yourself so that you have more financial runway. It's sad, but I get to talk to people from all over the world, all different ages, shapes, and sizes, and quite many of them undervalue what it is that they do. They're uncomfortable talking to clients about money, and so therefore they don't make it. Blair Enns, one of my favorite writers, he wrote the book, The Win Without Pitching Manifesto. He said, those that don't talk about money don't make it. And so what we have to do is we have to learn as artists not to turn away and to cast judgment on the business side of our business. And so when those two things can coexist, I think we get the best of both worlds. We have a thriving business that pays us what we're worth so that we can do more and better work.
Awesome. Thanks for that perspective. I want to shout out a question from Brandon Liu. He asks, as a fresh designer, as a design student, how do I get more freelance jobs? How do I land those freelance jobs? And as someone who's graduating with an associate's or a bachelor's degree, how do I find jobs after that as well?
Okay, there's a lot of questions baked into such a simple question. So the couple of things I want to be clear about, and I every time I get a chance to do this, I'm going to do it. We want to be sure we're using the word freelance correctly. To me, and I think this is how this works, a freelancer is a temporary employee of a company without guarantee of pay or health benefits or anything else. You basically are a mercenary. You go into a studio, you do the work. They pay you usually on an hourly or day rate. And when you're done, that's the end of your booking. Now, you'll make more hour per hour than an employee will, because there's lulls between when you work, and so you have to compensate for that. You typically have highly specialized skills, so they'll bring you in to design a typeface for them, or to build a website or something like that. When most people say freelance, they actually don't mean freelance. They mean I'm an independent business owner and I do contract work, which allows you to work from home, it allows you to have multiple clients, and allows you to hire freelancers to help you produce the work. You see, so it's hard to be a freelancer and hire other freelancers. So really what we have to do, and the reason why I make this distinction is because when we consider ourselves and we use the word independent business owner, it changes our own internal dialogue. So we have to acquire business skills like marketing, like invoicing, and writing up proposals and things like that. So if you want to get work as a freelancer, in the traditional definition, you would target probably 5 to 7 companies, and you would start to build a relationship with them on social media, because they're not going to know you from anybody. And so I have a very simple process. It's worked pretty well for the people who have tried this, okay? I want you to profile 5 to 7 companies and learn everything it is that you can about them. And I want you to follow a handful of people, but specifically probably the owner or the founder and whoever you think makes the hiring decisions over there. I want you to follow them on every single platform that they're on. This could include LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, on YouTube. If they have a podcast, follow them everywhere and turn the bell on for notifications. As soon as they post a piece of content, I want you to engage with it, interact with it, and write something really smart and thoughtful so that they start to recognize who you are. This is critical. Don't say cool, love it. Those are forgettable statements. Try to add something to the dialogue. And if you do this consistently enough, whoever is writing these posts will notice that you always show up first, relatively speaking, and you contribute to the conversation, so they start to associate you with someone who knows what they're talking about. This is you becoming visible and developing some level of authority, or at least dialogue with who it is that you want to talk to. Do this at a minimum of 30 days. Okay, just keep doing this. Keep interacting with them. They're going to start to figure you out. Your goal is for them to accept a LinkedIn connection, or to accept your friend request, whatever it is. And then now you know you're building something here. And as you continue to have this kind of dialogue, start to think about now what you want from them. If it's a freelance opportunity, you can start to broach a subject with them and say, you know, I'm a great admirer of XYZ project you've done. If you ever need to outsource work to a freelancer, please consider me. I do X, Y, and Z. This is how you do it. I'll tell you how you don't do it, and I'll tell you how most of you do it. Hey, you have a job, can you hire me? I don't know you from anybody. Why would I even? I'm going to block you right now, because that's all you're doing. You're coming in. My first point of interaction, my first point of contact with you is you being very, very selfish. What's in it for me? That's all you're doing. It's like, give me something, give me. So I have this very simple philosophy. If you give more, you will get more, but you have to start with giving first. To get, you must give. So you give value. Other things that you can do besides just interacting with their content, you can share it. You can talk about it. You can help them to promote a book that they're selling or a course that they're launching. Be their number one fan, and they'll be a fan of yours as well. So that's how you would get some opportunities if you're a freelancer. Now, if you're an independent business owner, you're going to play a slightly different game. What you need to do is you need to start producing pieces of content. It's called content marketing. This is a very different way of marketing people that we're not used to. We're used to advertising. Advertising relies on repetition, and it is built on a model of interruption. You're enjoying some piece of content, something interrupts you. Enjoying a piece of content, something interrupts you. What do we feel about companies who interrupt us when we're enjoying something? Not a good feeling. Okay, so you don't want to be that kind of person. So this is really important for you to understand. So if you're just asking for things, if you're just constantly in a state of self-promotion, no one is going to care, and they're going to be very annoyed by you. What you want to do is you want to create a piece of content. You want to help someone. You want them to achieve some kind of result. Basically, you want them to be able to have some kind of small transformation. They're here at point A and they're trying to get there. The gap that exists between where they are and where they want to be is what you want to help them cross. So for example, if you want to help designers, well, designers want to be able to learn how to use software more efficiently. They want to learn how to use type, or maybe an illustration technique, or a color preset, or a brush, or a pattern, or something like that. That's what you want to do. You want to be able to help people get to where they want to go faster and easier with less effort. That's what you want. So you create pieces of content and you draw them to you like a magnet. And when they start to interact with you, there's an opportunity for you to say, oh, do you need some help? I noticed you made a comment, or you looked at my profile picture. Is there anything I can do to help you? And so then you can begin the dialogue that way.
That's awesome. I love that. Question from Amelia. Amelia asks, I'm really impressed by the interactivity with Disney's newest rides and how they make the guests feel like they're part of the action rather than just watching it. How can we make our viewers, users, guests feel like they're part of the story through design?
I want to throw this question back. Is whatever you notice that's happening with Disney, turn this into a game for yourself. Use your powerful imagination. Think, what can I do that will get someone to feel like they're part of the story, so it becomes less of a monologue and more of a dialogue? What do you think that is? And there's some clues already in there. And can we look into the chat and see if anybody has an answer to this question? What can you do as a person who creates content to get someone to interact with it so they feel like they're part of shaping it? What could you do? I'm sure there's going to be some great ideas here. Or not. Do we put on the Jeopardy music right now?
Be brave, guys. What's the answer to this?
You guys can do it. Go ahead and type in the chat. We'll see it. Polls. Excellent. Excellent. Polls are really easy. You just ask the audience a question and you get their opinion. That's great. Yes, you can ask. Asking a question is great. Asking an open-ended question is wonderful to get engagement. Tell me about a time in which you almost failed. And then people start writing, and then you start talking back to them, and it's wonderful, right? You can give value, sure, but that's one way. Like, I'm going to give value. How do we get them into the content, right? You can create prompts. Prompts are great. Excellent. You can actually get people to do some funny things and interact with the content. I'll give you an example while people are coming up with ideas. There's a clinical psychologist, and her name is Dr. Julie Smith. She creates content on TikTok. I think she's British, and she'll tell you to do something on your phone, like as you're watching the content, and then she'll tell you to flip the phone upside down. And when you do and you watch the content again, it's a totally different experience. That's a form of interaction. So you can gamify this whole thing. You're only limited by your imagination, okay? There are, what are they called? They're called mentalists. You know how they're like, I want you to think of a number between 1 and 1,000. Yeah, and you're like, and I want you to think of a color. And then later on, is it, 27 orange? And you're like, how is that possible? And so those are like funny ways to get people to interact. It's not as interactive as what we're doing right now, but it's a form of interaction.
I love it. Okay. Question from Nate. Nate asks, how did you handle the changes in your professional role as your business grew? Specifically, how did your hiring methodology change? What did you look for in new talent as your agency grew? And was it challenging to take a step back from the construction of projects as you took more of a leadership role?
Great question. You're thinking like an entrepreneur at this point. So we know that if we have a project and if we do the work, that's great. Except for there's a couple little problems there. What if you can't do the work anymore? What if you get more work than you can do? Then you just keep accepting more work, and then you have less and less time for yourself, less sleep, less time on the weekend, less time to take to do self-care, like exercise and eat well, or to meditate, reflect, or to write. So as early as you can, what I would suggest that you do is start thinking of your job as in the role of the entrepreneur as an educator. And this is like a big idea for some people and like an obvious idea from other people, right? So in the first year of business, I got work as an independent contractor. They hired me or my company to do work. They didn't care how I did it, how long it took. They just had a price and they wanted a result. And so I would call one of my friends, and Candace, you know who this is, EB Valone. I'd call him up. I'm like, hey, EB, are you doing anything? And then EB's like, Doe, what's going on? I'm like, hey, I have some work. You want to do it with me? I'll pay you X. And EB's like, yeah, let's do it. So EB would come over to the studio. He and I would work on projects together. And we weren't quite doing double the work, but we were doing like 1.6x of the work. And then what I would do is look at his work, give him some critique, and then take that work and we would submit it. And then now we could do almost twice as much work as I could by myself. And I just kept doing that. So my first role and the way I think of myself is an educator. Now, in the business world, they might call you like an art director or creative director. Forget about those labels. What I'm trying to do is get someone to do work that is similar to the level of work my clients expect from me personally. The better I can educate them and help my friend up, the more he's able to do the work, the more work I can take on. So you start doing that. After a while, you're going to fill your stable with like 2 or 3 people who do kind of the things that you do. And now you have to manage them. And you have to make sure that there's consistent work coming in. So your role is going to evolve and change. You typically hire friends and family first, people you know, so your values are aligned. You get along really well, but you're going to start to outgrow the people that you know. So you're going to have to hire people you have no personal connection with. At this point in time, you should take note of the kinds of people you like to work with, what your beliefs are, what your worldview is, and try to hire people that are aligned with that. I made this mistake early on, and I made it for quite some time before I realized what the heck was happening. I hired based on, what do you think? What did you think I hired people on? I hired them based on talent. I just wanted the best person. Unfortunately, the best people come with the best attitude, if you know what I mean. And so they didn't take direction well. They created a lot of drama. They always wanted to be the center of attention. And it became very draining for me to manage the emotional energy of one person, right? And it's crazy how this would work. And so at one point I was thinking, don't I need the best, most talented people in order for my company to be successful? In a way. But later on, I learned something. It's not worth the price in which you pay. Because what it does is it creates a lot of tension in the office because people are now tiptoeing around these prima donna types, the best types of personality, and they just don't want to come to work anymore. So what happens is people will quit and you won't know why. People stop showing up. I mean, literally they show up, but emotionally they're not showing up anymore. So I would rather hire people that are more aligned with our mission, our core values, our vision, than people who are more talented, who don't align, because I can teach those people up. And I'd rather, in all honesty, work with someone who's 90% of what the other person is if they're more aligned with what it is that we're trying to do.
Very interesting. All right. Kate asked a question about internships. She says, do you think finding an internship following portfolio completion is a necessary step in the journey into the design field?
Wonderful question. I think an internship in a studio is going to teach you a lot of things that you're not going to be able to learn at school. The relationship is different. The pace of work is different. And you're going to learn techniques of someone who's working in the field right now, and they're going to be highly optimized, I think. So I strongly encourage all of you at some point in your life, at the beginning, the middle, or towards the end of your you going to school, that you get an internship, because it's going to change how you work. I noticed this happen a lot. We would bring on interns from Otis that were sophomores and juniors, and they would learn a lot with us. At first, they were super slow compared to how everybody else works, and they were unsure of themselves. But at the end of the internship, they were able to almost keep pace with industry pros who are being paid a lot of money. They would go back to school, and then all of a sudden, they would tell me this. It seemed like everybody else was moving in slow motion, because they're used to the cadence and the flow and how you have to make decisions. See, I believe this. I believe that creativity expands or contracts to meet a deadline. When you're working in a professional environment, you don't have days or weeks to consider something. You have a couple of hours to think through something, and you have to start working, because no one is going to pay you to sit there and just think, right? So you're going to learn to make decisions much quicker, and you're going to learn a lot of really probably like productivity enhancers. So you're going to get work done faster, you make decisions faster, and come to a better result quicker. So I think having an internship under your belt, the right kind of internship, I should say, is probably essential to your education.
Patrick asks an interesting question here. He says, how do you balance the design aspects of a project with the strategy aspects?
Oh, very good question. That's a very sophisticated question. I like the questions that are coming in, by the way, or Bradford, you're just picking the best ones, whatever, it's working. Good question there. So when we ask the question of the design versus strategy, it's a dangerous question because we're saying that they're separate. I don't believe they can be separated because a good strategy poorly executed is a bad strategy, and a good design without a good design with a poor strategy is just decoration. So I think this can be dangerous because we get into fiefdoms and being siloed in what we care about. So if we only care about aesthetics and we don't care what happens with the results of that, I think we become very narrowly focused on the wrong things. I'll give you an example. Early on in my career, I was freelancing at a very famous main title design shop called RGA. Later on, they became Imaginary Forces. And I was brought in as a hired gun to work on boards for pitches, right? And I had this attitude, like, I want to win projects, so I'm going to make sure I do something that's going to help them win projects because A, it's good for me to be able to see my design move forward. It's going to make sure that I get booked again. But it's like, I don't want to just make design for design's sake. I found that quite interesting because I would sit around and talk to some of the people in the room. What did they care about? They didn't care if the work was picked and if the work was awarded at all, which shocked me a little bit. So what did they care about? Well, they're just thinking about their portfolio. They just wanted to do something cool, irrespective of the brief, irrespective if the client was going to pick their work or not. That seemed really short-sighted and narrow-minded, in my opinion. So when we ask that question, like, how do we balance this thing? We don't. It's integration of these two things. They need to come together. They have to play well together, or you're going to have a losing formula.
All right. Joe says, I'm a new interaction design student at City College. I just started my own consulting company, Flat Consulting Group, and I'm starting with web design using the Webflow platform. He asks, since I'm new to design, would you recommend pursuing a design day job while I build my business?
Okay, hold on a second here. I think the question got into like some very specific details that weren't necessary for the question itself. I think the real question here, the real question is, I want to build a business and I need financial security. Should I take a full-time job? And the answer is, unless you have rich parents, yes. It seems obvious, right? What you need to do is you need to work to save money to build that runway. And there's a common expression, I'm sure you've heard it before. There's your 9 to 5, and then there's your 5 to 9. Your 9 to 5 is what you get paid for, what you show up every single day. And your 5 to 9 is what you work on for yourself. Those 4 hours that you're going to plug away and build your dream. And I think it's really important to be able to do that. So if you have a dream to build a business and you don't have investment capital to work with, some seed capital, the only way you're going to do that is to go work for someone, do something, but make sure you do a job that leaves something left in the gas tank for you. Otherwise, you're going to fail on both ends.
Jordan asked a question about, let me read out his question. How do we design for another culture with it feeling like cultural appreciation or cliche? How do we avoid it feeling like it's a cliche?
Yeah. Okay. So I think it's culture appropriation, right? Like you borrowing from certain cultures, right? Like I'm obviously not Black, but I love hip hop and Black culture. I love jazz. There's just so many things and streetwear. And so if I go and borrow something without honoring it, without understanding it, without immersing myself in the culture, I'll be just pillaging and stealing things, and it will become very, very apparent. I think in some ways we're all guilty of this because I'm not Swiss, but I love Swiss modern typography. I love it. The Swiss are amazing. So the way that you get around this, I think, is if possible, bring someone in your team who has firsthand knowledge and is of a certain culture, a certain aesthetic, whatever. Bring them in, learn from them, work with them, collaborate. I think that's the wonderful world that we live in today. In that, especially young people, they're brought into the world with collaboration in mind. Whereas people of my age and my era of design, we're kind of more lone wolves and we would just work by ourselves. So we don't know how to play well with others. But I think today, and you can see this in the social media apps, I think they're on TikTok. There's like things called duets. So you take the original video that's on half the screen and you do the response on the other half. There's something called the stitch where you take a few seconds from another video and you respond to that. So remixing and collaboration are very much part of this culture, and they're part of the zeitgeist. I just saw that Gucci launched a fashion line with Adidas, which was kind of really neat. I think people are calling it Gucci Adidas. And that's pretty interesting, you know, when different styles and flavors smash up. But what you don't want to do is you don't want to have, and this is in regards to anything, is to have superficial knowledge of something and go and design. Because what happens is someone will ask you a question and your answer will only be skin deep. So either do your homework, but the preferable way is to go and bring someone in to hire them as a consultant, to do a 50% partnership with them, or bring them into your thing and learn from them.
All right. Karen asked a question. How do you think graphic design has changed from when you were a student to students now? What advice would you give to new students to obtain leverage in today's industry?
What has changed with students or design? What is the question?
What has changed with design?
With design, okay. Okay, Candace and I are going to know exactly what we're talking about because we're of a certain age. Just going to put it out there. So when we were in design school, people like Neville Brody, David Carson, and they were the buzz, like and Margot Chase, they're Abel Greiman, they're the design gods, right? And there was a little bit of design celebrity culture, like when David Carson or one of these people would host an event, it would be standing room only. It's a very different time back then, and Carson was known for experimental typography. And kind of distress type, and pushing the limits of legibility and functionality. It was design as art, and you couldn't open up a book, a design annual, and not see Carson's work plastered everywhere. So he got the disproportionate lion's share of the awards, the accolades, and the attention. There were also people like the Duffy Design Group and Charles S. Anderson. Those are some of the people I looked up to. Primo Angeli, I think is his name. And so some really classic design. Today, it seems to be moving to a whole different direction where it seems to be very much driven by Silicon Valley tech companies, interface. So UX and UI design and clean, flat design seems to be like the thing that people want more, because essentially it's a lot more functional, and it needs to be because of the applications and who's paying for it. And so it seems like throughout design history, every few years, it kind of reacts to what's going on. So if everyone's doing something that's very minimalistic and all Helvetica and very flat design, you're going to see gradients, and you're going to see 3D, and you're going to see maximalism. And so there's a reaction and a counter to that. And this happens all the time. At the end of the day, I would not concern yourself, so much with following trends, because you're just chasing at that point. What I think is more important is for you to find the correct design aesthetic relative to the problem that you're trying to solve, and that is also consistent with the audience and what they want. So there's a couple like different things you need to be paying attention to. So I think it would be, probably inappropriate for me to use Exocet, a Jonathan Barnbrook typeface. It kind of has certain demonic undertones to it, and then make it distress and make it chrome and metallic for maybe a spiritual program for mindfulness. Just wouldn't work, right? So appropriateness is important unless you're able to find a way to do something totally unexpected and weave it back in and justify it. It's about appropriateness most of the time. So I wouldn't worry too much about that. And when people talk to me about design style, it's probably because they're used to a very specific style. So one thing that you can do to get out of that is to deliberately try to do something in a style that you've never worked in before. I try to describe it to friends like this. It's when I was a kid, we didn't grow up with a lot. So we had the typical box of crayons, and there were 16 crayons. So whatever you did, as careful as you blended colors together, you basically had about 16, 17 colors to work with. I always felt like, one day, and you'd walk by in a supermarket or the drugstore, and you'd see the Crayola 128 color pack, and I was just salivating. It's like, I just can't wait to use like 15 shades of flesh tone. Like, I just want to find the right one. Well, in design and styles, it's not that different. It's you want to have more crayons to color and render an image with to reflect your exact vision. And to me, that's about broadening the types of typefaces you use, the kinds of approaches and the techniques that you use as well. So one day you could do something very flat and maybe referencing like letterpress printing. Some other day you want to do something that's very digital and CG and like high fidelity rendering. And all those styles are appropriate as long as it's right for the job.
Cherry asks, hi, Chris. On one of your podcasts, you told an older pro member transitioning into a new creative career to document their experience as a way to connect and build with an audience. Can you give an overview of the approach you would take if you were in his position?
Yes. Okay. So what we're talking about here is this in the age that we live in right now, social media and content creation is going to be and already is a big part of your identity and about how you build relationships with other and community and how you generate opportunities for yourself. So generally speaking, I get a lot of questions on content creation. It's kind of what we're known for. So how do you do this? So if you're moving from one type of industry to another, or you're going narrower into a field of study, you're going to be a relatively like a newbie, novice. And what people don't want to do is they don't want to share what they're learning while they're learning it. There's a lot of insecurity that they have around this, that people laugh at them, that they don't know what they're talking about, and then they'll regret sharing something. Well, the reason why you have anxiety around this is because you've told yourself a story that as a beginner, that people expect you to be an expert. And so you pretend like you're an expert. And so the distance between your real skill set and what you pretend to be is where you create a lot of tension for yourself, unnecessarily so, right? The way that you get around this is you just say what it is you're doing and you become quite vulnerable and transparent. Everybody, I'm coming from this industry. I'm fascinated by this other thing. I'm going to start to share with you what I'm learning, and I might make lots of mistakes, and please forgive me for it. So what happens, instead of people casting stones at you, they want to support you. They might point resources at you or say, hey, here's the book that you need to read, or here's a tool that might help you do this much easier. And so they're coming along the journey with you as you build this. And it's much, much more powerful to do this while you're doing it, as opposed to saying, I've arrived, let me look back and bring you up along the way. We see a lot of people online who grow a fairly sizable audience and following because they keep documenting. Like when they draw their first letter form, they're like, hey, kind of a piece of crap. They document it. And they just keep doing this. And then they can do that retrospective and cut it all together. And it's super inspirational to see. Because I'll tell you this, whenever you watch a story, who are the heroes and who are the villains? Almost always, it's the same type of person, right? Whether you're talking about like a big fantasy epic or just some dramatic piece. The villains are almost always the powerful people. It's the boss who doesn't care about their employees. It's Sauron who's made the Ring of Doom. It's the people that have all the power. And they're generally the villains because why? Because very few of us can relate to their story. I didn't wake up this morning being king of the world. I didn't grow up with a silver spoon in my mouth. I cannot relate to you. You're not me. However, the underdog, the person who's trying, the hobbit, the person who's happy-go-lucky, who get killed by anything in that world, who's trying really hard. So if you follow Pixar's rules for storytelling, the number one rule for storytelling is this, is that people care more about characters for trying than for succeeding. Because we find our story in them. So whenever we hear or read about a story or watch something, it's always the underdog, the person who's struggling, the person who's an outsider, the outcast, the misunderstood, the person out of time, like they're from the future and they travel in the past, or the person from the past traveling to the future. They're always the person that we connect to, because in all of us is an underdog who's trying to be understood, trying to be seen. So that's the kind of person or character that you want to be. So it's okay when you're making content to be that person. That's what people want you to be.
That's so cool. I'm loving that. Let me go to Nate here. Nate asks, what are your thoughts on coming into the industry in a remote role? How do you gain the most out of remote experiences?
Well, everybody today is in a remote role. Just look at us right now. You're seeing everybody in their bedrooms or their living room or wherever, everybody's somewhere, and we're connected through technology. I think prior to the pandemic, there were a lot of opinions about remote work doesn't work, that we need people to be around us so we can look over their shoulders to make sure they're being responsible. Like, how do we know they're actually doing work and not just Netflixing and binge watching every program? And I have to admit, I had some struggles with this myself. So prior to the pandemic, many of my staff were just checking in the office from time to time only if they needed to be there. And one of my editors asked me, "Hey, Chris, I have elderly parents. I don't know what's going to happen with them. Is it possible? Would you consider allowing me to leave the state and be around them, and I'll do the work remotely?" And I had some concerns because there are a lot of files being sent back and forth, massive files, because we do video, right? I'm like, well, let's just try this and let's see what happens. Well, I didn't really have to think about that as a concept or as an experiment, because that experiment was pushed upon us. Because a few weeks after the country shut down, I sent an email to everyone. I said, everybody, until further notice, go to the office, get your computers, get all your belongings, and go home and work. And I think a few weeks after that, I sent another email and I said, we're never coming back to the office. So now permanently go get all your stuff and be wherever you want to be. And what was really interesting is people left the city, they left the state, some people left the country. And I was thinking, this is great for them, because living in Los Angeles is super expensive. So if you're not going to be able to participate in the things that we have here in California, why would you pay for this? And if you have parents or siblings that you want to be around, you could do the work, and we can trust people. So the experience right now isn't so much like, how do people feel about us remote working? Because the world has caught up to the people who have been remote working for a decade now, right? So you've already got the systems in place. A couple of things I notice about myself, though. I do miss being around people. Even as a shy, awkward introvert, I do miss having lunch with someone, or putting my arms around somebody to give them a hug. Because oftentimes we just see people the size of postage stamps, and it's hard to read what's going on, or people have their cameras turned off. And I need a little bit of that feedback, the energy, and that's important to me. A couple other things you need to be mindful of if you're new to remote work is to be able to manage your day and manage your energy. Because what we didn't realize before, which I now know, is that offices are distraction factories. I'd go into the office, 15 minutes in, somebody's calling me, hey, we have a meeting. And then, okay, it's lunchtime. Okay, back from lunch. And then it's coffee break time. And it's a lot of distractions. But what it did was, it got me to get out of my chair. So I remember like 3 months into the pandemic, I was exhausted and I couldn't figure out why. Like, I got to that point in which, like, I was having a hard time keeping my eyes open. And I slept enough, I thought. So you know what was happening? I was doing deep focus work for 10 hours a day straight. And it finally caught up to me. So then I had to implement some new things. Now I make sure I go for a hike twice a week, a 3-mile hike. I want to make sure every single day I'm getting in some form of exercise, because I need this. And something else I realized is, since the kitchen's just right downstairs, I'd run downstairs to eat lunch with my wife. 30 minutes, I'm right back on the machine. That's a no-no. I'm going to take a 2-hour break. I'm going to take a 3-hour dinner break. And if I want to, I'll go back to work. Otherwise, I put in a good amount of work. So it's the opposite of what you think. So instead of people worrying about whether or not remote workers are going to do enough work, it's more that, are they going to do too much work and burn themselves out? So you need to be disciplined both ways. So I like to work in 90-minute sprints, where you focus for 90 minutes. You don't have anything turned on. All notifications are off. You do that. And then you take a 15, 20-minute break to do whatever it is you want. You want to check your Instagram, do whatever you want. Go read a comic book, walk around, look out the window, go play with your dog or cat, whatever. You need to do this, because this is how we're going to be working for the long haul. So those are a couple of habits. Now, one last thing. If at all possible, it is important to reconnect with the team once in a while, maybe two times a year, so you still have that connective tissue. Otherwise, it feels like we're all falling apart or going further apart, which is not what we want to do.
All right, Patrick's got a challenging one for you. He asks, what was your least successful project? What would you do differently?
Oh my gosh. I've done I made hundreds of commercials. There's some stinkers in there. And I'll tell you one of the most embarrassing ones, okay? I'll tell you the most embarrassing one. Not the one that cost me the most, but the most embarrassing one. I think a year and a half out of school. I'm working with a big broadcast television network, and they love our animation. They love our design work, even though I'm still learning. And so they give us the opportunity to design a show open for a new show that they're launching. And I really don't know what I'm doing, so I bit off more than I can chew. That's the problem. When you're confident and you do a couple of good projects for somebody, they reward you with a bigger, even more challenging project, and you don't know what you're getting yourself into. And so we wound up doing a shoot with like tabletop, like we went to Hollywood, bought a bunch of toys, and we're filming these things, but I didn't know what to do. So a lot of times the toys just sat there and it felt like a photograph. So when I gave all the footage over to our editor, his name is Sergio, independent contractor. He's like, Chris, what do you want me to do with this? I'm like, I don't know. Can you make it do something? He sent over a rough cut to our clients, and they freaked out because like, oh my God, did you shoot anything that moves? Did you move the camera? I'm like, oh, total embarrassment, no. So they're like, you know what? This isn't going to work. And they're very kind. They just went out and shot a new open. And it was pretty embarrassing professionally. Needless to say, they did not hire us to do another shoot after that. So we wound up just animating more type for them. But that was not a good result. I have more stories like that, but please don't make me relive them.
Okay. Another interesting one from Lisa. She asks, what was a piece of criticism that changed your perspective towards the design industry and business?
Oh my gosh. There's some conditions on this one. A criticism that changed my perspective of the design industry? I don't know. I don't know what the criticism is. This is a tough one. You stumped me. I can tell you how my perspective on the design industry has changed. I don't know exactly if it was because of a criticism. Okay. So I'll tell you a very important lesson that I learned in my life, and maybe it'll bring you some comfort, or maybe not. I don't know. I'll try. Okay. When I started out, I started my company in 1995, and we are part of I think generation 1.5 of motion design firms in the world, like motion designers. Like there was Flavio Campa, and then there was nobody. So it was Flavio Campa and a few people doing design-led, desktop-based animation and compositing. I was very lucky to be part of this group, and so there were plentiful, plenty of opportunities. Budgets were high, jobs were really cool and interesting, and not a lot of competition. So the most we ever had to do to get a job was to get on the phone and just talk to someone. That's it. They would decide, yes, we want to work with you, or no. That was it. And then we had to write a treatment. And then we had to write a treatment and a storyboard, and then with style frames. And so the industry was changing really quickly. And now it's like full on rendered boards that would take us days to do, thousands of dollars to produce, tens of thousands of dollars to produce. And I didn't like that process at all. And I hired a business coach. His name is Keir McLaren. And Keir told me, hey kid, if you want to play in this game of advertising, this is what it takes. Because I was really bitter about it. I was like, this is not fair, Keir. He goes, I'm not telling you it's fair. I'm just telling you these are the rules. We don't make the rules, but we get to decide if this is the industry we want to work in. He's like, do you want to work in this industry, or do you want to work in some other industry? But that is your choice. So what Keir did for me was he kind of held me accountable. That I'm not a victim here. And he would always say this to me: there's no victims, just volunteers. Because you could go work in a different industry if you want. But what he got me to do was to understand that there's a pitch process. And if I want to play in the big leagues, I needed to learn how to pitch like a person in the big leagues. And so in the course of the next few weeks and months, I had to swallow that bitter pill and to embrace pitching and to learn how to love pitching and win, because otherwise I was not going to be in this industry for a very long time. And so we went from losing 4 out of 5 jobs to winning about 6 or 7 out of every 10 jobs. Quite a reversal of fortunes. I tell you this story for a couple of different reasons. You might be in a position when you feel totally hopeless. Ask yourself this question, am I at cause or am I at effect? Right? Can I impact this? Can I change something? Or am I always at the end of decisions being made for me? And unless there's a gun to your head, unless somebody's extorting you literally, then you have accountability. You have ownership over this. And so the minute that you decide to take ownership of it, it empowers you to do something different. To go and read a book or attend a workshop or hire a coach or to change your mind about something. Now, what are the probability that I'm going to win a pitch that I hate doing? My state, my energy, my emotional state is going to be low. And so my creativity is going to be filtered through that lens. And so I'm not going to be able to pitch and win. I need a different attitude. I need different tools. And once you make up your mind that you want to take ownership of this, then someone can enter your life and teach you and show you the way. I'm going to share one story that is pretty horrible, and that you can see what I just told you kind of in full effect, okay? And I even tell you who the client is. There was a gaming network, the first of its kind, and I love video games. I mean, I've played video games all my life. I'm a part of the culture. And so I wanted to win this project really badly. And they were launching a new network, and I knew like all my friends who ran design firms are also gamers. So the competition was going to be really stiff. But I'm committed. And I start generating some ideas for this big pitch, because the pitch is in like a month. And then the agency producer or the network producer sent over the contract. I'm like, contract? What are we looking at a contract for? And the contract says, we're going to pay you $2,000. We own all the intellectual property. You cannot sue us after the fact. We own everything. And I scoffed at this. I'm like, what are you talking about? I've already spent $18,000 of my own money on this pitch. You're going to pay me $2,000 to own our ideas? So I told them, you know what? I tell you what, don't pay me anything. If you like our ideas, hire us. If you don't worry about it. Because this is a slap in my face to pay me $2,000. I've already spent 18, and I'm not even done yet. They're like, okay, Chris, no problem. No problem. So I'm like, the nerve, right? But we're charging ahead. We're generating ideas. I'm loving what we're doing, right? And then what we did was, it's the day of the pitch. We're going to go there and we're going to present our ideas. So I printed out these massive storyboards, and then I printed out booklets for everyone to have. I'm still walking into that meeting with a little bitterness in my mouth, because it's like, if you wanted to have us sign a contract like this, you should have submitted the ethical thing. You should have submitted it to us day one before you even invited us to pitch. It was a little underhanded to wait a week and a half into the pitch to send us something to sign. I'm not going to do that. I have more self-respect than that. So I go into the meeting and I tell the producer who we've been talking to, look, I'm going to present. I have booklets for everyone. That's for you to keep. The big presentation, I'm taking back home. Okay, it cost me too much to make. It's whatever. We go and present their ideas. They seem pretty happy with it. They're like, Chris, leave the big boards behind. We'll keep those. I'm like, the nerve of you people. The nerve of you people. I just can't believe it. I'm like, no. I said at the beginning. So what did I just do there? I did a lot of things wrong. Okay. I proceeded to work on a project where the clients were showing me that they're at the minimum disorganized or they're unethical. Okay. Already have a bad feeling. I should have just bowed out. I was like, you know what? I changed my mind. Forget about it. So there's this thing. It's called the sunk loss fallacy, that once we invest in something, the only way we can get our money back is if we see it all the way through and are able to recoup it. I should have just walked away and said, you know what? That was an $18,000 lesson. I needed to learn that. But we kept going. So it became a $27,000 lesson that ultimately, when clients see that you're not willing to play ball with them, at this point, they wanted everything. And they had us kind of over the rails, if you know what I mean. We're supposed to say yes. But I said no. And we got it there, and I never heard from them again. and I never want to see any of them ever again in my life. Right? So there's a lesson there for you. So if you don't learn to love what it is that you're doing, if you keep telling yourself I'm a victim or the world's stacked against me, it's going to affect your attitude, and it's going to lead to you like that's a self-fulfilling prophecy. So your mental state is going to impact how you do things. And so you want to make sure that you're in a good mental state.
Chris, I think that's the perfect place to end. And I can't thank you enough for stopping by, reinvigorating us, sparking our creative juices. Everyone join me in thanking Chris, and please go to the Futur, follow him on all the social platforms, check out their website. Chris, thank you.
Thank you very much,
Chris.
Hey,
Thank you,
Chris,
Sean.
thanks so much. It was fantastic. We appreciate it. Thanks for making a difference.
Thank you very much, Candace. Thank you for being that spark and helping me through a very uncertain time, in the teens, in which I was just a little bit reckless, for you supporting me, because without your help, without Raphael's help, I probably would not be here today. So thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thanks, everyone, for stopping by. Please take care. Have a great afternoon, everyone.